Okay.
Hi, today we are going to learn about decorating with slip. I'm going to show you one technique. There are many techniques to decorate with slip. We're going to be doing a stencil technique. And we'll be doing this on your plate that you made already. And what slip is a mixture of clay and water and a colorant. And it's usually mixed up to kind of a latex paint type consistency. So you can think of it as clay paint, but it is mostly made up of clay. So we can apply it to our clay pieces and it will work just fine.
It's okay.
The one we're going to be using is brown. It's called our brown slip. This is one of the ones that we have in our kit that we've supplied to you. And it's a beautiful reddish color. The colorant in this is iron oxide, also known as rust. So it's that nice rust color. After it's been fired, you'll notice with a lot of ceramic materials that what you see is not necessarily what you get after it's been fired. So this nice reddish color, when we fire it, we put our clear glaze on it, turns to kind of a chocolatey brown usually. So this is the same as this. So don't be surprised if your color comes out a little bit different than what you're expecting. So we've got a bunch of things here that have been decorated with stencils. Some of these have been bisque fired. So this, for instance, this is a little slab plate that's been made. It's been gone through the preliminary firing and it had a stencil decoration on it. And this is another one. So this is a thrown bowl with some stencil decorations. These little manta rays around the rim were little paper stencils. Other examples, this one I just showed you, of course, is really some fancy paper cutting with the stencils. I've got a little row of little dogs running around the rim. That's a lot of scissor and paperwork. You can do any kind of a design you like with your stencil. This is a little octopus, another little dog. These ones here have been, again, bisque fired. This is another piece that's been decorated with a stencil, and this has kind of a transparent brownish glaze on top of the stencil. So you can get some really nice images on there. I'm going to put these aside. Are you still recording?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, all right.
No, take your time. It's just,
Okay.
It's easier for me to cut it.
Okay, so you have made your plate, your little slab plate. You remember that you were going to let it get to a leather-hard state before we decorate it with our slips. Slips are applied when the pieces are leather-hard. Leather-hard clay, you will recall, is like cheddar cheese. So it's a little bit flexible, it's a little bit stiff. It'll hold its shape better than clay right out of the bag. And you know, if you dent it really hard with your fingernail, you can make little dents in it. So it's not hard, dry clay, but it's also not sticky clay right out of your bag. So this has been dried to that state. Remember when we made it, it was really floppy, and right now it's a little bit, it can hold its shape pretty well. So we will make a stencil. So you're going to cut out a stencil, and you can cut it out from either newspaper, that works well, or copier paper, printer paper, which is this. Don't use a really stiff paper. That'll be a little bit harder to work with. It can work, but copier paper is just fine. The stencils you're going to cut out, they can be either a positive stencil like this one or a negative stencil like this one. Either type of these will work out. If you want to be really clever, you can cut one out and you can use both of these. So that's your choice. This was a what I call a positive stencil. So this was a paper stencil, and I brushed the slip around it on the outside of it. This other one was a stencil where it was cut out to just use the opening. So we just used an opening and brushed the slip on the inside of that. So I am going to use this type on my demo here. So first you have to decide what you're going to, what design you're going to use, and then you can decide where on your plate you're going to put that. You can use more than one, of course. I'm just going to do one right now, and this is kind of where I'm going to be putting it. Now, since I'm going over a corner here, I'm going to have trouble getting it to lie down flat. So I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment here, and this is something you can do. I'm going to cut it in pieces and apply it in pieces. So this will help me to make it be flatter when I lay it down. So I can lay down one and then the next one and then the next and another. So you can make several pieces. If you're working with your stencil and it tears for some reason, again, not to worry, you can just put it back on in pieces. So don't freak out about it if that happens to you. All right, so what we're going to do is you need a little dish of water. Oops, spill. So we're going to make this wet. I'm going to dunk it in some water. Now I'm making it wet so that it will stick to the Leatherhard clay. So this is why you need Leatherhard clay. Dry clay, this wet stencil won't stick to it very well. So I am going to lay this down. It's floppy now, so it's a little more difficult to see what I'm doing, but I'm going to put it down where I think I wanted it. No, I wanted a little more angle. Still not right. So you can adjust where it's going by just playing with it. So this seems a little better. Get that angle right. So you want it to go down pretty flat as you can. And the crucial part to get flat is right on these edges where the paper meets, where the opening of the paper meets the clay. So you can tap it down. If it starts to get dry, you can add a little more water. If you get too much water on here, you can always take a little sponge and dab some of that up. Okay, so I've got another piece here. And something like a leaf is pretty forgiving because every leaf, of course, is different. They have a general shape, but they're all individuals. So I can fudge it a little bit if I want to. Okay, so, and I think I'm gonna fudge this just a little more. You can see how this is pretty easy to do since it's not an exact shape. All right, so I've got an opening here. And the overlap of the paper won't matter at all. And making sure that it's all attached down. Okay, at this point, it kind of looks like so. And again, making sure that all those edges are down. If you've got a little buckle, if it's small, don't worry about it at this point. Okay, so stencil is on, and we are going to add some slip. So I'm going to use the brown slip. I've got my regular strength slip here, and I've also got a little container where I've thinned some of it out, because sometimes the slip gets a little, I noticed that it's a little too thick, so I want a little bit more runniness. That's a real scientific term. So
That's just with adding water.
just with adding some water, yeah. So you can make your slip. This is really runny, this stuff here. It's really drippy compared to that latex consistency. So a soft brush is good to use. If you've got a nice little soft brush like this, you can also use, if you've got one of those chip brushes, you know, from the paint store or from the hardware store, that will work. And I just dripped on my hand. And so load up your brush with a little bit of slip. Can you see this okay? Yeah, okay. I like to start by brushing kind of away from that edge, so starting on the paper and going inward, and get a little preliminary little coat on there. The brush marks, if you've got, you know, heavy brush marks, say if you've got a really stiff brush instead of a soft brush, those will show a little bit, and some people use that to their advantage. In case this is going to have some brush marks, I like to go over it again and make some nice brush marks, beautiful brush marks instead of kind of funky, scabby brush marks. That's also a scientific term. Okay, so now you can see this is very wet. It's very shiny right now, and at this point you will have to wait until it's no longer shiny before you take the stencil off. So I have another one that I did earlier that has some stencils on it. I'll pull this one forward. So this one I did with the opposite technique. So the stencils were positive pieces of paper, and I coated the whole background of this with the slip. And I did this a few hours ago and left this to dry a little bit. So you want to let it dry until this has evened up. The slip layer feels the same as your Leatherhard clay. So it shouldn't be shiny. When you're touching it, it shouldn't be leaving, it shouldn't feel tacky. So I've left this a while, and I can kind of see where those edges are just faintly. So you can take your needle tool and find those edges, and you can just, this is the fun part. It's like kind of like picking scabs. So once you get it started, you can just peel those off. Again, if it rips at this point, you get little pieces of paper left behind. You don't need to worry about that kind of too much because it will just burn off. Other places where you've got little mistakes, I'll show you how to fix those in a few minutes. I think this foot still has paper on it here. So this was a design of some dogs. I like dogs. Dogs. I'm from New Jersey originally. We say dogs. So we peel those off. Be careful of this. These little pieces of paper have the slip on them, so if you smear them somewhere else, they're gonna add some slip where you may not want it. So let's get a bunch of dogs, a pack of dogs. So this is like, it's like magic, right? You can get nice sharp edges on this technique, and that's one of the things I like about it. Alrighty. So I talked about how to fix little glitches on your slip coat. And what you can do is, when I brush this on, I was trying to get right to that edge. And you can see in a few places it kind of went over. And so you can take a knife, and at this point you can just kind of scrape some of those off. So you can just clean up those kind of edges if they bother you. And over here on the back of this dog here, it's got a little place where the slip went underneath my stencil. And again, you can take a knife and you can just very carefully scrape that off and remove anything that you don't want in there. So that's pretty handy to do. And again, where I had this two stencils overlapping, sometimes that happens where it goes one over the other. So you can just make sure that's all the way you like it to be. And if you want, in addition to your stencil, this is what I'm requiring, is to have a stencil decoration. If you want to also add some more detail on there, you can do it by using a technique called sgraffito, which I think is some kind of Italian word for scratching or writing. This is a little piece of Leatherhard clay with some slip on it. You can take a knife tip, your little fettling knife can work, or this is a little narrower knife. You can find some tool that you like to use. Do not try to do it with your needle tool. It's too sharp and too pointy, and it'll pull up a strange fuzzy burr, and it won't be very good for the decoration. You don't want a super narrow line because it won't show up after we glaze it. So you can cut right through your slip layer and add decoration. You can just do things. It's kind of fun. You can do any kind of things you like on here with sgraffito. You can write some words. I wouldn't try and go with lines too much narrower than this. So don't try and write like this super epic poem or something on there. The little smaller knife tip is one of my favorite things for doing slip sgraffito decoration. So this is optional. I mean, you can do it. Here we go. You can do lots of things on there. Which needs under eyelashes too. All right, so you get the idea. And if you don't like the colors that we've given you in your kit, I've mentioned in the syllabus that you can buy some additional colors, and I gave you information about that. So you can buy what's called commercial underglazes. They come in like lots of dozens and dozens of different colors. Sometimes they're brighter colors than the ones we've given you, because these are all mineral based. This one, of course, is iron oxide. But there's like bright reds, bright yellows, those kind of colors. And you can buy these at Clay Art Center, which is in Tacoma/Fife. They also are online, so you can buy them online. Blick.com has some. And if you want to look for local ones, Michael's has some. I think they have like only 5 or 6 different colors, but they have these commercial underglaze. And you can use this just like slip on these pieces. So good luck on this, and have fun deciding what designs you want to do. And I think that's it.